All right, we're back.
Let's do it. We are jumping into a controversial director that really divides the room. Some people love him, some people hate him. Not controversial, just more so. Some people are not fans of his stuff. Wes Anderson. He's got 11 movies.
Yeah, 11. Yeah, 11 feature-length films under his belt so far. Handful of short films. One coming out later this year, which should be fun. Yeah, not to be confused with Paul W.S. Anderson.
You mean Thomas?
No. Paul W.S. Anderson, populist filmmaker.
I thought you were saying Paul Thomas Anderson.
No, there's Paul Thomas Anderson, PTA, great director who we haven't covered yet. There's Paul W.S. Anderson, famed populist filmmaker known for directing the Resident Evil films, and Event Horizon.
To be clear, you're saying W and then the letter S.
Paul W space S space Anderson. Paul W.S. Anderson, another director.
It sounded like you were saying Paul Wes Anderson. Yeah.
Oh, Paul W.S. Anderson. W.
Got it. There are 3 different people. This is just Wes Anderson that we're talking about.
Yes. And the reason I call him populist filmmaker is because that's what he has considered himself, which is an amazing thing to believe about yourself.
A populist filmmaker?
Yes. Anderson has repeatedly stated that he considers himself a populist filmmaker who only cares about whether his movies entertain the audience and make them cheer, rather than their reception by professional critics.
Paul
W.S. Anderson.
What the hell? Okay, cool. So we're not talking about that guy.
No, I only mention him because there's 3 American directors named Anderson who all started at the same time, who all make very different movies. We're never going to mention Paul W.S. Anderson, probably, unless we do an episode about hacks, frauds, and stooges, because W.S. Anderson is a hack. Not a fraud, but certainly a hack.
I can't wait for that episode.
I've been developing it for a long time, but it's going to take days.
Yeah, it's going to take a while.
Directed by Robert Zemeckis. All right, so anyway, getting into Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson is a Southern fella. He was born and raised in Texas. He's from Houston. He spent a lot of time in Austin.
Yeah, I don't know any of that shit.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it about him. But
I just assumed he was like Danish.
No, he is thoroughly American. He is from the great state of Texas.
He looks Danish.
He does have some very distinct features.
Not a Danish, but he looks like he's from Denmark.
Yeah. Yeah, so he grew up in Texas. He went to school at University of Texas at Austin.
I'm sorry. I'm going to have to keep interrupting here since we started off on a funny foot. Do you know what Willem Dafoe's character is in Asteroid City? Do you remember his name?
No, I don't. I remember him in the movie.
It's Salzburg Keitel.
No.
It legitimately is. Spelled exactly as Salzburg, Germany. Salzburg Keitel.
Did you see the name of Adrian Brody's character in the same movie?
Yes.
Shylock Graversky.
You mean Schubert Green?
Born Shylock Graversky.
Didn't see that. No, I saw Schubert Green.
No, it's both names.
Oh God. Okay. Anyway, back to the director Anderson.
Yeah, so fella from Texas goes to University of Texas at Austin, where he meets Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson and Andrew Wilson. And they all eventually come together and start writing a bunch of scripts. They say we want to make movies. And they all break through when they get the funding to make. Actually, they made a short film called Bottle Rocket, which ended up being then uh, like the feature length film, the debut for Anderson. I think it was because the short film was watched by a filmmaker named James L. Brooks, who was a TV guy for a long time, pretty famous director. His stuff's maybe less known now, um, but at any rate, Wes Anderson writes Bottle Rocket with Owen Wilson, starring Owen Wilson, his brother Luke Wilson, his other brother Andrew Wilson. They got James Caan in the movie. Um, it's like a semi-complicated heist movie that is extremely self-aware. Um, it doesn't quite have the cinematography that Anderson's become known for, nor the editing. It's a little looser of a movie, and you can see more of the Hitchcock at the seams. Um, because I would argue that more than anything else, Wes Anderson uh, is most notably a disciple of Hitchcock and his filmmaking style. You wouldn't know it by the majority of his work now, but I mean, he steals scenes wholesale from Hitchcock. Um,
Yes.
I actually have. I pulled out my Hitchcock Truffaut book behind me. I was leafing through it earlier just to
Jesus, I thought you were turning around to look at the people on your background for a second.
No,
You're like, yeah, if you take a look at this
no,
background and
no.
around.
No, I have the book.
Oh, you're gone. Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. He does definitely. Oh, that's not gonna work. That's not working. Yeah. He does directly. I mean, he takes the 1 point perspective and just like it's in every single shot.
Yeah, pushes it to its furthest extreme. It's just less extreme in Bottle Rocket. Um, have
Yeah.
did we watch Bottle Rocket together?
Yes, we did.
I know I was in college.
It was at your college house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a while ago, but I only watched it once. Didn't really leave that much of an impression on me. It was like a finely made movie, mostly interesting because it launched the career of both Anderson and the Wilson trio, who have all had increasingly less success over time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I don't have that much to say about this movie. It's like a weird caper movie. It doesn't have a lot of the complexity of narrative that Anderson's movies would get to, but it does have a lot of self-referential stuff. So there's like fake heists they do and practice for real heists. The real heists never go well. Um,
It feels like a freshman movie,
yeah, exactly. It is notably amateurish, um, which
which
is not surprising for.
I'm sure our first film will also feel that way at times, but who's to say?
Well, yeah, I will exploit certain things like violence to skirt around some of the weaker aspects of
Just to
both
get
the
around
writing
like
and
a lack of substance in character or
Mhm.
narrative.
Yeah, lots of loud sounds, harsh cuts. Peck and Paw will be the films of Peck and Paw will be my Bible to get away with more. Um, so yeah, Bottle Rocket's the start of his career. Like I said, directed by Anderson, written by him and Wilson, which would become a theme for the two of them over the next few years as uh, Anderson's sophomore film is Rushmore, which pairs him up with his now continued long term collaborator, Jason Schwartzman. um, who plays a high school student who falls in love with an elementary school teacher, and he's best friends with Bill Murray, and Bill Murray's also in love with this teacher. Um,
Yeah, I've never seen this.
it's a good movie. It starts to get closer to that style. Um, it doesn't quite have the narrative heft behind it that Anderson would very quickly get to. Um, this movie is also written by Wilson, if I didn't already say that. Um, he is in the movie, as is Luke Wilson. Brian Cox is in it. Brian Cox plays the principal. So I know we um sorry,
Big
got distracted.
big Brian Cox fans here.
Yes, huge Super Troopers. Great stuff. Um but yeah, I Rushmore starts to have his sort of the Anderson House style of cinematography and editing. Um pushing a lot of that stuff that he's now become completely famous for. Um Trying to find the budget of the movie. So, Bottle Rocket cost 5 million to make, didn't even make 1 million back. Kind of a failure. Rushmore did eke out a small profit, cost like 10 million and made about 20. So he's still making very small movies at this point. Um, this movie notably revitalized Bill Murray's career, which had been slowly slipping into decay, despite the fact that he had been in Groundhog Day just 5 years previously. I think that movie has sort of entered the zeitgeist more thoroughly after its release, not during,
Yeah.
which is definitely true of a lot of Anderson's work as well. Um, I don't know how people feel about Rushmore. Usually, when I talk to people about Wes Anderson, um, this movie doesn't really come up. I assume people like it.
There are a
Like,
lot of this is a cult movie.
yeah, I was gonna say all of his movies that are not universally popular are cult movies. So like Bottle Rock is considered a cult classic. Rushmore, Life
The
Aquatic.
the Royal Tenenbaums. People love that movie.
Yeah, that movie won Oscars. That's not a cult movie. That was just everybody said that's a good one.
Gotcha. I did not
Um,
know it won Oscars.
oh yeah. Um,
According to IMDb, though, it's rated the same as Rushmore. So
tough,
yeah,
tough one.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, it
Off
didn't win an Oscar. It was nominated for Best Writing.
off air, you and I were just talking about how nonsensical the IMDb ratings are for so many things, especially TV shows. TV
Yeah.
shows are notoriously inflated on there. Um,
Yeah, so we'll get that. That's kind of all I have to say about Rushmore. It has the elements of weird, complicated love triangles and some of the visual styles starting to come into shape. It's a huge improvement on Bottle Rocket for sure, both in terms of direction and writing. But I would argue that Anderson's career really begins to take off with Royal Tenenbaums, where the complication of balancing lots of characters that are now all being played by famous actors. Um, really takes the car and starts driving at high speeds.
yeah, for sure.
Owen Wilson still wrote this one, so the two of them were both nominated for Oscars for writing this. Owen Wilson is also in the movie. Just a huge cast of um, famous actors. I don't think Bill Murray's in this one. No, he is. Who the hell is he? Is he like dates Gwyneth Paltrow?
Bill Murray.
Yeah.
I think is he one of Gene Hackman's sons?
No.
He's part of the family. Oh yeah, maybe he
I think
does.
he's like married to Gwyneth Paltrow, but at any rate, this is the complication of the family tree in this movie. Um, I remember you kind of saying you weren't as big a fan of this movie, like it just didn't do a lot for you.
I found it to just be kitschy. Like that's the exact word I used 5 minutes after watching it.
Yeah, that is the general consensus on Anderson's filmmaking style.
Yeah, that's something that'll.
Absurdist, kitschy, whimsical, quirky.
Yeah, it's you get like flashes of that um in his movies. Um what I would say with this one is that I've said this before about like costumes, but then also like overproduction is that when I watched it, I was just continually reminded that this was just a movie. Like I was taken out of the immersion because they were trying to immerse me so much. But it was like
Mm,
over the top stylized to the degree where I was like, "Oh, this is a play." Like it
okay.
was like watching a play for me. Which I understood what was happening with the story and the characters, but like the experience itself was messed with because of like the intensity of like the red tracksuits, of like the really odd idiosyncrasies of like each character and stuff were like really ramped up in this. Whereas potentially if they were like tempered a little bit, it would be more like not, I don't want to say realistic, but it would just feel more smooth, I guess, as opposed to just like being very jarring with every scene. It maybe it was also the editing that like took me out of it. I don't know, but um as far as the experience itself that I'm talking about, not so much talking about the movie um in particular. But I liked the movie. I just don't think it's as good as everyone thinks it is.
I think it lacks a sort of tenderness that his later movies all really nail. Um, like I would argue his career has like three sort of major distinctions. The first one are his first two movies where he's developing a sense of style, both as a writer and as a director.
Hmm.
And then sort of his 2000s movies are another stage. So that would be the Royal Tenenbaums, The Life Aquatic, and The Darjeeling Limited, where I think each of those movies does something well, but none of the three of them are masterworks. Like they're all. I mean, I have different feelings about each one. The Royal Tenenbaums, I think, is a great movie that is just shy of being amazing. And part of that is that it lacks some sort of connective tissue to make me care more about the characters, because
Yes.
that's where I don't really care. Like there is something tragic about each of them, but you're never the tragedy's never really allowed to breathe.
No, you're detached from them. Like
Right.
it like holds you at a distance as opposed to like drawing you in. At least that's how I felt.
Yeah, and I mean it's obviously very intentional. Um, but it doesn't I mean like this Anderson's plots and characters tend to be very similar. It's just the situations he puts them in that really differentiate them. Um, so like the this movie has like all the super gifted, super smart kids, which is then echoed again and again. Um,
Yeah.
Moonrise Kingdom, Grand Budapest Hotel, Asteroid City, all of those have that, and Isle of Dogs.
Hmm.
But yeah, I do know what you mean. I wouldn't call it like a play because it's still but it
It's not a
lacks
play. I mean the effect of it on my viewing experience is like a play, where I see the backdrop or I see the things that are moving behind the scenes and it takes me out of the experience of it.
yeah, its artificiality lacks something cinematic.
Yeah. The Life Aquatic. Did you watch this again or no? You didn't, because you
No,
watched Fallout last
I
night, right?
can't. The Life Aquatic isn't stream like I can't find it without streaming it somewhere else.
Gotcha. Yeah. I remember watching it and just thinking it was a movie. That was how I felt about it.
Mm.
Like there were interesting scenes in it. Um the parts that stuck out were cool to me. But as an overall movie, it largely like felt like it was missing a few things, which resulted in it missing its mark. Like it was like inconsistent with what it was going for in a lot of ways.
I have like the exact opposite problem.
Mm.
It does exactly what it wants to do, and I just don't like that. Like his movies always focus on like a very specific type of person. Like all of his protagonists, short of
No, it does what
Bottle Rocket, but
it does what it wants to do, I'm saying, but like thematically or message wise, it like completely misses its mark. That's what I'm saying.
how so?
It never felt like it was like even building up to anything. It
I
was
mean,
just
it's
like here.
about him trying to take revenge on his dead friend that got killed by a shark.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I,
it's like Jaws.
yeah. I didn't get like anything else outside of that.
Uh,
I also don't really like Bill Murray's character in this. So maybe that's
mm.
what I'm talking about. I really, to be honest with you, I remember the beginning scene of this, and I remember one scene, like a chase scene, and that's it. I remember
Yeah,
them doing like a really long bit about the map of the ship and like having to show like the different parts of every single compartment and the chase scene, the beginning scene, and I don't remember even how it ends.
they find the shark and then don't kill it.
Yeah, I thought that they found the shark and then they found something else as well. Some other creature that had never been seen before or something.
Yeah, I think they find multiple things that are like they're making a documentary as they go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if they find new species of fish or not, but uh, they also like run out of dynamite, so they can't kill the shark anyway.
Yep, that was a movie that had a lot of people in it. The Darjeeling Limited, I watched on an airplane, so it's like three brothers that are on a spiritual journey through India, right?
Yes, because their dad just died.
This one I would definitely watch again as opposed to Steve Zissou,
I'm the other
personally.
way around. I'll never watch this one again, but Zissou I want to watch again just because I don't have a firm memory of the whole movie. Whereas this one I remember thoroughly and I've liked it just fine, but there was nothing about it that made me want to revisit it.
I remember one scene in particular. It's always the scene, the dramatic scene with like music playing over it. That involves like slow mo or some type of action that I remember from his movies distinctly. And he always has those in every single movie. There's always one or two of those moments. Um, yeah, I don't really remember this one that much. This was on I think you and I both watched this on the flight to Germany that one time when we decided to drink coffee because we said fuck it, we can't sleep.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna sleep anyway, so
I don't think this movie is as much of a cult film as Rushmore. I mean, people still like it.
Yeah, this one has not really undergone like a revitalization or reappreciation the way that Rushmore and Life Aquatic have.
Mm-hmm.
This one is kind of just the forgotten Anderson movie that some people saw and nobody rewatched. Possibly because the characters are just really strange and the way they interact like there's nothing inherently interesting about the relationship between the brothers.
Yeah.
So even like the movie centers around the conflict between them and their estrangement. Um, but like I think it's an issue that he has that he didn't really solve until Moonrise Kingdom, which was exploring a lot of these characters' humanities apathetically.
Got
Because
it.
that like laconic type of character that he's now, I think, perfected through his last few movies, it just doesn't work as well in this one. So I enjoy the movie, but thematically, I don't think this stuff comes through as strongly. Like I think the Royal Tenenbaums is much better than this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. Next is Fantastic Mr. Fox,
Mm-hmm.
which I thoroughly enjoy. I really like this movie a lot.
Yeah, so this I would argue this begins the next stage of Anderson's career.
Yeah, it's not claymation, it's like stop motion, right? These little figures.
Yeah, stop motion.
Yeah, because it's not animated.
No.
Even though it's labeled that, they're like actual physical figures that were created for it.
Right. So I should also mention it is important to note that Anderson doesn't write movies by himself.
Okay.
So his first three movies are all written with Owen Wilson. The Life Aquatic is written with Noah Baumbach. I don't know how familiar you are with his movies.
Yes, he's someone that keeps popping up on my radar. But Fantastic Mr. Fox was a Roald Dahl book. And then Wes Anderson and Baumbach combined to adapt it for the screen, right?
Yeah. I don't know how I've never read that book, so I have no idea how similar it is. I assume
Yeah, me
it's
neither.
basically the same plot, but um yeah, the only reason I mentioned that is because the Darjeeling Limited was written with Schwartzman and Roman Coppola, who will pop up later.
Mm.
Um, but you can tell that in writing it with the two of them, all three of their voices battle throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And there isn't a stronger vision that comes through writing, even though Anderson's direction is really strong. It doesn't quite match the writing. And I think that is honestly the biggest problem with like before he really hits something like Fantastic Mr. Fox, where there is some inherent struggle in the difference between the writing and the directing.
Yeah, it could be that he and Baumbach work better or like understand each other more or like their stories. They understand the story or characters better in combination. I'm not sure.
Well, I think Fantastic Mr. Fox works because there's no people. So
Yeah.
the lack of humanity is replaced by the depth of skill for the voice actors. And the fact that this movie is actually like genuinely heartfelt.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Um, And so all of that is sort of a push away from what he'd been doing before, because it's like a kids movie, and the rest of these are not. Like these other movies are like darker. They have themes of suicide, depression, failure to achieve one's dreams.
Yeah, Royal
Uh,
Tenenbaums has some dark shit in there. Some
well,
dark
they all
stuff.
do. There's like
Yeah.
suicide stuff in all three of those movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's silly animals in a movie that's not even 90 minutes long. Um, yeah, helps sort of get things back on track. I think.
Great movie. The crispness, like with each of the animals when they're on screen, and the color is insane. Like I've only seen this movie once, but I've seen like, clips from it and everything, and just his style and like the one point perspective of it all like really meshes amazingly well. And you hit the nail on the head too with the voice acting in it. Obviously, you have Clooney. Um, I think oh man, who is it? Meryl Streep, isn't it, right? Yeah. Meryl Streep is Mrs. Fox. Damn. Yeah. Great movie. If you haven't seen that, you should definitely check out Fantastic Mr. Fox. And then Moonrise Kingdom. I actually have not seen this one. I've been meaning to forever.
Yeah, I mean these. So, like, if first half of Anderson's career is him getting his footing under, in the second half, you can still easily divide these six movies into two camps. Where Fantastic Fox, Moonrise Kingdom, and Isle of Dogs are clearly made for kids.
Mm-hmm.
They can still be appreciated by adults, but they're children's stories versus the other three that are like complex narratives commenting on the existence of narratives and what happens when the audience knows that the characters know they're in a story. Um, but yeah, Moonrise Kingdom is like just a straight up like coming of age romance movie um, about two kids that are in like one's in like a Boy Scout camp and he falls in love with this girl. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they just like go and hang out on a beach. Um, it's just a fun movie. It's well written. This is where he starts collaborating with Roman Coppola more heavily, um, and they nail it. I mean, it still has some of that kitschiness with regards to like the production design and cinematography, but in general, the strangeness of the characters, like strange portrayals of these really odd characters, just works.
Yeah, I think I would probably like it more than Royal Tenenbaums. It's probably more like heartfelt, and there's more emotion tethering the characters together and the audience to the characters, maybe,
Um,
but maybe not.
there's more honesty,
Okay.
but there's no less artifice.
I see.
Um, like the editing style is still very similar.
Right, right.
Um,
I would imagine. Yeah, I mean, I'll just have to see it. Uh, do you want to skip to Isle of Dogs then, and then work back?
yeah, just to cover that, because yeah, Isle of Dogs. It's hard for me to even compare Isle of Dogs to Fantastic Mr. Fox because they go over the same themes and the style is very similar. And the plots are just like ludicrous adventure stories, and every part of them, like you said before, like the detail, like essentially just all comes through to give you a very certain feeling. Um, and I
Every
think that
every scene is just like a wild, wild photograph. Like it's like a for this movie, Isle of Dogs and Fantastic Mr. Fox. It's kind of like if you gave a fifth grader who's a genius just a whole bunch of figurines or like just materials to make figurines and they made it and then you gave them like a 4K camera and then they like built like a movie or like a short film. Like you could imagine like a short film inspiring this for like a real filmmaker because he's a real filmmaker. Um, yeah, like every scene is like a photograph. If you just pause any scene of Wes Anderson, it's an awesome photograph, which he continually references. Obviously, he's very much a photographer first, or at least I would imagine. I don't know if that's true, but
Anderson?
Yeah, it seems like it.
Oh, no, I don't think so at all.
Is he a painter?
No.
Just a wicked attention to detail man.
Oh, that's why I like threw that book up in front of the camera.
Because people who become directors can come from all sorts of different areas and approach it differently, or because he just grabbed Hitchcock's style.
Yeah, that it's like I attribute it entirely to the like Hitchcock is basically a guy who views shooting the movie as a chore. Like Hitchcock sees the movie in his head before it exists anywhere else. And then he goes, ah, now I have to go shoot the damn movie. And then he
Right.
begrudgingly takes on that. Anderson feels like the same way. Everything is clearly storyboarded out perfectly to like the everything has been done ahead of time. All it requires is that somebody set up a camera, get the lights going, and put the actor in front of him.
Yeah, like you just hook up an IV to Wes Anderson and like go. Or like he is the bag, rather. He's the IV bag. Just hook him up to the camera.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the fact that he chooses like symmetrical compositions and has a lot of like slow motion walking shots and uses a lot of like empty flat space with characters around it. Like those tend to either play really well with the narratives he's chosen or battle against the narratives that he's chosen
Yes. Yes.
in a way that
Definitely.
obviously I think he's gotten better at, where you can have a movie like Asteroid City where it does both, but it's always working,
Mm-hmm.
versus a movie like The Darjeeling Limited where it's doing both, but that doesn't come through as strongly because the narrative of Asteroid City is 9 stories stacked on top of each other to show you the absurdity of, being a perfectionist in a world where you feel depressed. Whereas the Darjeeling Limited is just, wow, we're depressed.
Yeah.
Want some cough syrup?
Yeah. Isle of Dogs. Um, it's a movie. It's fun. It's a
Oh,
fun
it's a
movie.
great movie. I mean, I think all of these, after Darjeeling Limited, are like great movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the scope of them being more childish, like the Fox and Moonrise Kingdom and I Love Dogs, I think those three um, are held back by their childishness, not because they don't still try to explore some of the deeper human um, conflicts that Anderson always is going over. Like the relationship that people always have to these troubled fathers, or an endless sense of longing or lack of purpose. Like they're still explored throughout these movies, but the conclusions of them are a lot cleaner.
For
Um,
sure. For sure.
and I think that cleanness takes away from what the other three movies are able to do in very different ways and to a very different degree of effectiveness.
I think that's also my problem with Steve Zissou is that it is like a clean end, but it's just kind of like that's it.
Yeah, they literally like go to get back on the boat.
Yeah.
Like
Um.
like he wins the award or whatever, and is like back to work, which
Yeah.
does feel very similar to Anderson. Like because his movies are self-referential to himself. Like as
Absolutely.
an auteur who knows his own place in sort of the Hollywood system, um, like he has no like he doesn't seem to care whether or not people like his movies.
and he doesn't care that they're similar because like every time he's asked like why do you keep making the same movie over and over again, he's like, I didn't know I was even doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is insane because he references himself and the creative process constantly, meaning he does know that he's doing that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, let's get to the 2014 movie that we've been working our way up towards.
Yeah, because basically, Fantastic Mr. Fox was an interesting direction for his career to go. Isle of Dogs doesn't feel like new ground. Like, I remember seeing the movie and being like, great, another great Wes Anderson movie. It felt like
Mhm.
he was checking off a box and he did it all well.
Yeah,
And the movie has, some emotional feeling behind it, but it's nothing incredible. Uh, Not like the Grand Budapest Hotel, which I made no secret of my love of this ridiculous movie.
I'm probably gonna rewatch this like this week. Honestly, I'll probably watch it after. Oh shit, it's on Hulu.
Hmm.
I'll probably watch it after Barbie or the new Mission Impossible movie. Honestly, yeah, this movie is infinitely rewatchable. Like ever, I honestly am pretty bad at remembering the story of it because it is a story within a story. And I
Within
always
within a story.
within a story. I always forget Jude Law's character is in it until I see him on screen, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That it's actually told because there's a thread that you're following, and you're like, wait a second, what the hell? What's
Yeah, it
happening here?
starts it starts with a young girl who had been reading a book written by Jude Law, who's also played by Tom Wilkinson. So old Jude Law is the younger version of Tom Wilkinson, who's an author who wrote a book about the Grand Budapest Hotel called The Grand Budapest Hotel.
Tom Wilkinson.
Yeah, Batman Begins. He's like
Ah, yes,
Falcone. Uh,
yes.
Tons of other great
And then
movies.
F. Murray
Michael Clayton.
Abraham. F. Murray Abraham is the owner of the hotel.
Yes, he's
Okay.
Zero.
Yeah, that's right. He's Zero. So Zero is also telling that story to
Jude Law.
Jude Law. Okay, that's
Yeah.
what I thought.
So Zero is technically the protagonist.
Yes.
Um, and his story is being recorded by Jude Law, who is Tom Wilkinson.
Yes. But the
Um,
story is mainly about Monsieur Gustave.
yeah, Rafe Fiennes. Yeah, so it takes a minute to get into it.
Dear God, if anyone who's listening to this hasn't seen this movie, they probably will never watch it because of that convolution. It like that part doesn't matter so much. It's not foundational
Well,
to your enjoyment of the movie.
yeah, so then we started off by talking about the ridiculous names of characters and kind of we didn't even mention the characters' names in his other movies because they're less good. This movie feels like where a lot of those ideas all logically had to go.
Yes.
Like he finally came back and just the movie is both epic but small, has insane convolution for no reason, but is primarily just about a concierge at a hotel that loves sleeping with old women. That's the main plot. And it's like on the verge of World War II. Yeah, that's like, this movie is also just hilarious. Like this
It's
is one of
very
the
funny.
funniest movies I've ever seen. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
the
humor. Like he definitely strikes the humor perfectly in this. Uh, with the characters' eyes and reactions, but then also just putting them perfectly in a scene and like, all right, so you're gonna do this thing. Make sure it's like pretty dry, but I can just imagine him like giggling to himself behind the camera. Deputy Kovacs.
yeah, lots of good
What the
character names in
hell?
this one. Vilmos Kovacs, Serge X, Albert
Jopling.
Henkels.
Jopling. Harvey Keitel is in it as Ludwig.
Yeah, he's in the prison.
All right. Yeah, that's right. I was just thinking still of Salzburg Keitel. which is just definitely because Keitel, to be clear, is a great last name, just an awesome last name. Yeah, ludicrous cast, absolutely insane.
Yeah. I mean, Jeff Goldblum is really good in his small role in this movie. Adrian Brody as the villain with Willem Dafoe works perfectly. And I mean,
Yes.
This is one of my favorite Ray Fiennes performances, if not my favorite of his.
Yeah, holy shit. He's so charismatic and just kind of like he's not loopy or like flowy, but there's like a bit of a flow to him like in every scene, and then he comes up with like these really funny plans to get out of situations, and he's like, "Yeah, well, this is just what we have to do." And you're like, "How did you possibly come up with that idea as the solution here?" Yeah, super enjoyable movie. Infinitely rewatchable, as we said.
And
That
this one I think is the first of his movies where the ending, because it does have a complete ending, which I know I was just criticizing.
mhm.
Um, Obviously there's a darkness at the ending, but the like F. Murray Abraham's performance basically ties the whole thing up while also showing all of that emotion that Anderson never wants to show.
Yes.
Which is someone, crying or emoting very strongly.
This is my favorite and his best in my mind.
Oh, no doubt.
I know other people like a different movie, but I think that's like that. I think that's similar to liking Batman Begins over The Dark Knight. But
I mean, I like the ones that didn't get caught. Some people like the ones that did get caught. It's a preference. A lot of people have those.
yeah, mm-hmm. It's fine if you have a favorite of his, but I think talking about his best, uh, it's difficult to not say this is his best.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms alone of how much they're able to do with very little money. Like the budget of this movie is 25 million,
That's
which
crazy.
is, yeah, it may sound like, a lot of money or whatever, but
That
in
is
terms of movies,
crazy.
it's almost nothing.
I would have thought it was
Uh,
like at least 100 mil.
no, it's because everything is done with great miniatures and
Yeah,
matte paintings. All the action is kept close,
true.
in a very like Kubrickian style rather than like huge set pieces. Um, I mean, there's that whole ski chase, which is hilarious. Uh,
Yes. Yeah, that gets back to his chase scenes that are all kind of similar to that actually. Even in like Fantastic Mr. Fox on the motorcycle. You get that in his next movie after skipping Isle of Dogs, The French Dispatch. Although The French Dispatch's chase scene is animated, which I
yeah, that
very
felt like
much dislike.
a budget or a COVID thing.
I think it was a COVID move, unfortunately. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of this movie. It is certainly very flawed, whereas the Grand Budapest Hotel I think it may be perfect, whereas this one is like all fucking over the place.
it very much is. It is tackling a lot, which is to its credit. But yeah,
It's basically three stories. Um, Technically there's like a prologue and an epilogue. The prologue is just Owen Wilson on a bike talking about food, and the epilogue is
I forgot about that. That's right.
yeah, and the epilogue is just a bunch of famous people being like, "Wow, it's so sad that Bill Murray is dead." Um, but the meat of the movie is the three main short stories combined together, which are meant to be, tales written by the workers of the magazine, The French Dispatch. Um, Personally, I think the concrete masterpiece, the first one, which is about Benicio del Toro, a murderous criminal who's also an incredible sculptor, um, and painter. Uh,
That's the
like
best story.
Yeah, that one I think is perfect. Like it emphasizes a lot of Andersonian themes really well.
Leah
Uh,
Seydoux,
yeah,
like
Leah Sado.
he's in love with her, and they at the same time are looking up at the ceiling, and he's like, "I love you," and she's like, "I don't love you." Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's about like the Anderson's indifference to anyone's appreciation of art because art obviously is something that comes from within that must be made basically to prevent suicide. Um, because it seems like this movie is dark and there is a theme of depression undercutting everything.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. For
and
sure.
I think that's always been in his work. This one, I think, brings it out the most heavily. That Anderson is someone that certainly suffers from depression and indifference towards anyone's appreciation of his work, and how basically he just uses this stuff as set dressing um, to get across the ideas he wants to. But yeah, the concrete masterpiece, Benicio del Toro is so excellent in it. Tilda Swinton is great in as the like staff member for the French Dispatch,
Mm-hmm.
and like giving the big presentation about the actual sculpture, which, as we learn through the story, is basically just what Benicio del Toro sees when he sees a naked Leia Sadu.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, revisions to a manifesto, I'm less a fan of. That one felt like it was Anderson falling back into his vices, his worst crutches. So that's the gift that is behind you now. Um, I don't know. I didn't really like Timothy Chalamet's character. I didn't care about his relationship to Frances McDormand. Um, and I didn't really feel like it had anything to add to what the movie was going for about how she like forces herself into the story to create a story.
Yeah, these were people in the story. Um People doing things. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, the chessboard revolution. Uh,
Right. It definitely felt like it was grasping. Um the next part involves the inspector from the Batman or detective, Jeffrey Wright. Yeah.
Yeah,
Every
the private dining of the police commissioner, I was a huge fan of. The animated thing at the end is kind of just tacked in there and is like, huh, all right.
Yeah, if you can look past that, it's somewhat fine. But yeah,
It's not bad animation, it's just a really weird decision where it's like clearly they just couldn't actually shoot this scene.
it was very jarring.
This I think is the best one of the best like bits of writing and delivery that I've seen Anderson do with that Jeffrey Wright character.
Yes.
Roebuck Wright is his name.
Yeah, I meant to say his name after that, but I every time I think of him, I think of Jeffrey Rush's name,
Mm.
even though it's spelled differently, and I can
Yeah.
never remember Jeffrey Wright. Um,
Yeah, Roebuck Wright recounts the story of going to the dinner for the commissioner of the Inui police force. Uh, and yeah, then there's like a kidnapping, and there's all this funny stuff with food. Um, and Wright gets in trouble for being gay.
yeah, that's right.
Um, But once again, I think like Wright's character is meant to be someone who's like really good at his job, really detail oriented, like understands everything about food, but is just kind of depressed because he feels like he has nowhere to grow, like he has nowhere left to go in
Hmm.
his career. And that idea I think comes through really well in obviously I think something that Anderson's been trying to communicate where he's like, I don't know what to do now.
Right.
But then he ends up having fun, like saving the kid, in the same way that Anderson must clearly have fun making these ridiculous movies.
For sure. Yeah, last on the docket is Asteroid City.
Sanderson's newest and now most insanely convoluted movie yet.
Yeah, yeah. I personally liked this more than French Dispatch. I know you said you didn't.
I didn't before. I think I do now.
Okay.
It's growing on me. I think it has stuff that bothers me about as much as the French Dispatch, but there's nothing in this movie that's as weak as that chess manifesto bullshit.
Yeah.
Um,
I really liked for how complicated the plot was and the number of characters. I really liked how like slowed down it like took itself. Like it was very measured with like two characters interacting with each other or several
yeah,
characters. Like with Augie and Scarlett Johansson's characters, for
Midge,
instance. Yeah, Midge. What a silly name.
Midge Campbell.
Sorry to all midges out there. It's just a weird name. Anyway, it's short
Yeah,
for
I think that it
Margaret.
helps that
Is
there's
that short for Margaret? What's that short for?
yeah, usually.
Um,
I think it's because of all those inserts.
yeah, like I mean,
Like
you and I
Act
watched.
1 scenes 1 through 3. Act 2 scenes 4 and 5.
Well,
Like that.
that helps in some ways. I just think that when they have, I mean, it is very much like a play on screen, but I think it's because it introduced it as that play that I was like way more invested in it and way more bought in to the point where it didn't jar me of being like, oh well, this isn't a movie anymore. Like it was so meta and that it acknowledged that and it showed you, hey, this is a play, by the way. Like it's a movie that's taking place inside of this play. That's also just like this guy is inside of all of those different stories and he's getting lost in all of those different stories.
Hmm.
So I'm saying like experientially I was more invested in it because I was like dropping through all of those different windows of the stories into Augie and it acknowledged all of those windows as opposed to some of Wes Anderson's earlier work that like the Royal Tenenbaums, which at times felt like it was a play or overly stylized or something like that. But it wasn't a play within a movie. It was just a movie. It was just it was just like several different character stories. So the fact that it was so convoluted and so complicated made me like way more invested. I don't know how else to explain it. But yeah, the scene when he's talking to to Midge, like across the whatever you want to call them trailers, and she's like perfectly in the window as like a photograph, and then there's like the sunset on the side. It's just amazing scene. And then he takes a picture of her. Obviously, photography is
Yeah, I
huge
mean
in
that's
this one.
sort of the core relationship of the movie is those two who have the same loneliness and they can't escape their I mean his goal is to just take pictures. He's a photographer, so he literally quantifies the world with images, similar to Anderson, whereas
And he's laconic, right? Like
right,
he
yeah,
hardly
refuses to
says
show emotion.
that much.
Yeah, despite the fact that his wife just died, so he's actually heartbroken, but won't show it. Um, Whereas Midge is bored with her career, where she is playing someone who has to constantly show emotion, so she refuses to show emotion because she's saving it to play a character, even though in the movie it's not really Midge Campbell, it's the character playing that character.
It's Midge Campbell's character playing Midge.
No, Midge Campbell is the character in the play, because remember, we're watching the play in the movie.
Yeah.
So Mercedes Ford is
Right.
the
I see what you're
character who's
saying.
playing Midge Campbell.
I got you. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the I mean basically it just deconstructs the idea of I mean, so many elements. It's deconstructing like pre-production by just looping that in and saying, well, we're just gonna show all of the detailed ways in which we would make a movie as a play, as a movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I thoroughly enjoyed. When it started, I was extremely skeptical with the way that it was being framed, like the different frame narratives that were happening, because I was like, oh my god, this if this is just doing it for a bit, I'm gonna be concerned. And then it just paid off really well.
Yeah, I mean the scene with Margot Robbie, I think pays off a lot of what they're going for
Yeah,
towards the end of the movie. But I mean, once again, it's a huge cast and everybody kills it pretty much in every role.
yeah, especially Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, as the
I
alien.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely don't think it's as good as Grand Budapest. I don't think it's that close to it, but I do think this movie is great. Um, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure I'll watch it again once it comes out of theaters at some point, but
Yeah, I'd like to own a lot of these movies. If nothing else, to watch them muted.
hmm,
Because I think that probably says a lot more about what Anderson is going for.
true.
Um, because when you remove his dialogue, which is like so precise and verbose,
There's a lot of talking in this movie.
there's a lot of
There's
talking in every one of his movies.
yes,
This
but
one's more because there's two narrators,
yeah.
whereas, well, I mean, Budapest has two narrators, but
I just found it to be surprising that I didn't mind it as much. But yeah, even like the kid actors. I mean, I know I haven't seen Moonrise Kingdom, but the kid actors in this were really good. They were really strong. You've got
Shawshank.
the group of genius kids, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say there's also this movie does start by saying that they're near Los Alamos,
Yes. Yeah.
like they're near Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
There's like bombs going off in the back. Just funny that to come out right before Oppenheimer.
It
Um,
was watching. It was funny watching it like 2 months before we watched Oppenheimer, or a month before, whenever it was. 2 months. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think people um do this one justice or give this one as much credit as people are right now. I think it will continue to rise as the years go on, I would say. But excuse me, who's to say where his career is going? I'm just glad to see him making great movies still.
yeah, I mean he's a filmmaker who is far better than most. His technical ability is near unrivaled as a director to helm productions that are almost always more than what they feel like in
Yeah.
terms of like cost to output.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating drawing it back to Oppenheimer as well. Just you have Christopher Nolan, you've got Wes Anderson. I mean, there's obviously um Paul Thomas Anderson operating now, David Fincher, a whole bunch. Like we could just keep going. But anyway, these
Could we keep going?
maybe not. These directors, they have like almost like a magnetic. I don't want to compare them to like huge conglomerates of companies that are like eating up small businesses. But if you think about the actors as small businesses, right? They're kind of like offering their small business to a larger business. And that's kind of how I see like the sphere of Christopher Nolan and the sphere of Wes Anderson, right? They're kind of gobbling up these actors and actresses who are, I would say, positively offering their service or offering their capabilities and skills to this director. And it feels like Wes Anderson, a lot of people are lining up to be in his movies because they appreciate him and what he's doing for art and for film, which I think is a good thing. It's pretty cool to see. And I think that's just going to continue. Like I'm sure his next movie is also not the short film, but his next one is going to have an even more ludicrous cast. I mean, this cast is probably his most ludicrous.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Bryan Cranston, Margot Robbie, I just said her name, Scarlett Johansson, right? Tom Hanks, who I'm still convinced that was supposed to be what's
It
his
was
name?
supposed to be Bill Murray.
I'm convinced it was.
No, it was.
Okay.
He literally got COVID and then got kicked off the movie.
Gotcha.
Like he got sick and then they're like, well, we're gonna keep going, and Tom Hanks is right here. And Tom Hanks is like, I'm way better than Bill Murray.
Jesus, that one scene where he like claws the air and acts really weird. Do you remember that? Do you remember that scene where he like kind of freaks out on camera and like claws the air in front of Jason Schwartzman?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean he's a character playing a character, so that's understandable.
But he's
Yeah.
even like made up to look like Bill Murray is like the way my brain interpreted it. Like every time I saw him on screen, I was like, "Oh, that's just Bill Murray in a Tom Hanks suit, skin suit." Yeah. So we're nearing the end of Wes Anderson.
Yeah. I don't have too much more to say about him. I mean, I'll continue to watch all of his movies as they come out in theaters. Just makes interesting movies that are like, while his style may be a brand onto itself, I think it is still constantly refreshing and different enough movie to movie, that this stuff almost always will end up being some of my favorite movies every year.
Yeah.
Like I would always rather watch a new script written by him and Roman Coppola than like the next just whatever it is. Like I don't want to see Indiana Jones 6. I don't want to see Star Trek 35, Star Wars 12, whatever it is. Like those
Jurassic SeaWorld.
Well, pretty soon, I think hopefully maybe the next episode or the one after, we're gonna do an episode diagnosing and going over how Hollywood movies performed this summer, because just at looking at the numbers, profit wise, Hollywood is hurting. Where Asteroid City was profitable, but that's because the budget was really small.
We
And
gotta get our scripts approved. We gotta get in there.
well, that nope. Unless we're asking for $500,000. No. They we have to wait for the blockbuster to die its horrible death. And maybe we'll see that because of the writers' strike and the Screen Actor Guild strike. But
I think in the next 5 to 10 years, I mean, it's just going to be a roller coaster, right? It's just going to keep going up and down. But it feels like we're nearing or we've passed that apex. We've passed that mountain.
what mountain?
where it's just so bloated, where they're just like they're just lighting money on fire to produce CG in order to put like a person on a comic book in the background of something, and then do an overly convoluted, insane scene where there's an action sequence where none of the actors had to do anything because it's all CG.
Yeah, but part of the strikes that are happening now is in response to the fact that one of the ways that studios can save money is just by using AI generated imagery or stories or actors. So who needs an actor if you can just have an AI generated actor do the thing? Who needs a story when you can get some program to spit out a story for you? And the same is true of a lot of the quote unquote AI generated imagery.
Yeah, so why are they going to have to pay people for that?
They won't.
So they'll lose.
Who?
The writers.
Yeah.
Ruh-roh.
Presumably. Or they'll come, or the writers will come to the table and the studios will be like, okay, well, we agree to your demands. We're making half the projects for a third of the cost. We're just shrinking our whole industry. Bye bye. And then they just fire a bunch of people. That's what it needs. The industry's not only bloated because the biggest movies cost all of the money.
Yeah.
Those big movies are also being made by hacks and frauds, and we need to cut all of those people out. So if it means that there are fewer movies, maybe it means that there will be better competition for creativity. But also, anyone can make a movie now and release it just about anywhere. So in terms of that, the way that those people will climb up through the ranks of the studios, I think the top of the studios will always have the same problems. They'll always be for profit and lack creativity.
For sure.
And the only person doing anything at the big budget that's been interesting anyway for like 10 to 15 years has been someone like Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
Or Denis Villeneuve, or in some ways Christopher McQuarrie, but
or Scorsese.
Yes, I wouldn't even say Scorsese. He can barely get a movie made. Like he goes to try to make a movie, and they're like, "Old man movie, kill yourself."
Yeah, that's true.
How are you still alive, old man?
Right.
Clint Eastwood, though, that guy can get a movie made. He just walks into the studio, and it's the Republican studio, and he's like, "You got money for me?" And they're like, "Yeah, Clint, we'll give you whatever you want, as long as it's
How many American flags are gonna appear in this movie, Clint? 50. All right, we got it. How many times are you gonna shoot the scene? Twice. Once. Yeah.
Yeah, that was an amazing story. Like Matt Damon is obviously in the press a lot now because he's in Oppenheimer. And people always ask him about working with X director, and he loves Ridley Scott.
Put your hand in front of.
Yeah, I see that it's goofing.
All right, there we go. Sorry, he works with Ridley Scott.
He likes Ridley Scott and hates Clint Eastwood because Clint Eastwood literally made him do one take for every scene in Invictus. So Invictus is like just a trash movie, like bad technically. And part of it is like Matt Damon's accent changes scene to scene because Clint Eastwood was like, "Fuck it, we're done. Just move on."
But Matt Damon's like, "Wait, I didn't get it right. Like it sounds funny," and he's like, "No,
he's like, we're already packing up. We got other places to be."
That's really funny.
So yeah, Wes Anderson.
Yeah, and Hollywood. Speaking of dropping dead weight, got to go to the bathroom.
Next time we'll talk about Paul W.S. Anderson.
Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. Adios, everyone.